Nice, Genesis G80. Are you sick of all the questions yet?
What?
Well, everyone knows if you buy a Genesis, you're going to be asked the same 5 questions over and over again.
What?
Is this my Uber? What car is this? Nah, mate, you can't fool me. It's just a fancy Hyundai. Ooh, I've never been in a Bentley before. Fancy car, mate. What's a Genesis? Hey, wait. Is this an Aston Martin?
Oh, I just picked it up. No one's had any time to ask me any questions about it.
Ah, right, okay, cool. So, what's a Genesis? Well, we were being a little bit silly in the intro, of course, but there's truth to it. Because I've been lucky enough to have a GV80, which is the SUV version of this car, as a long-termer, and I'm getting sick of people coming up and asking me, what is a Genesis?
Yes, even though Genesis, believe it or not, has been in the Australian market for about 10 years, a decade, it's still got a bit of an identity crisis. People still don't fully understand what the brand means, and that was partly exacerbated by the fact that they did a bit of a soft launch. There was the Hyundai Genesis, a model within the Hyundai family, and now it's standalone. You can't buy one from a Hyundai dealership. There's these lovely boutique kind of sales centers. They're having a bit of a proper crack at it at last.
And the product has improved dramatically, because where the first range was a little bit hit and miss in certain parts, now we're getting, a much more polished product at the end of the day. The GV80 is an SUV that I think both of us would happily recommend. So,
100%.
Being the sedan version, we should like this a lot as well. So, tell us, what exactly are we in today, and what do you get in a G80 range?
Well, you can have 2 different G80s. This is the entry-level version, so it's about $85,000, and for that you get a 4-cylinder turbo engine, 2.5 litre, and that's coupled to rear-wheel drive. The one above that, you'll get all-wheel drive and a 3.5 litre twin-turbo V6, but this is the entry-level version. Not that you'd really know it to look at, because it's pretty well spec'd.
Beautiful in here, isn't it? And value is a key Genesis strength. So this car's 85 grand, and you are getting a lot more car for your money compared to the Germans, like an equivalent 5 Series or even an Audi A6, A7. You've got to spend 100 grand to get into their model ranges.
Exactly, and for that cash, you're not even getting something that's close to this. To get something that compares with this on performance and equipment, you're looking at about $110,000 for the BMW. And then Mercedes is even more, isn't it?
It's like 150 grand to get this level of performance from a petrol engine. Speaking of which, how many kilowatts and what's the torque figure?
So, 224 kilowatts and 422 newton meters, which is actually...
That's impressive from
really
a 2.5 litre unit.
Yeah, initially I thought that was going to be a 4-cylinder turbo in this car is going to be a bit inadequate, but actually on paper alone the figures look pretty impressive.
And paired to an 8-speed automatic, Hyundai's own proprietary 8-speed auto, it's pretty good.
I'm very interested to know what that goes like, because of course they're going directly for ZF with that, aren't they? Like as a rival. That gearbox is in everything, including BMW. So interested to see how this goes.
Absolutely. Interior quality is a big thing for the Genesis brand. Not only do they want to cram a lot of equipment in here, but they want the build quality and the materials quality to be top shelf, and first impressions are they've kind of nailed it.
Oh, totally. I love this wood trim. I don't generally, as a rule, I'm not keen on wood trims because it makes me feel like I might be entering the latter years of my life. But
you feel right at home, Dan.
Shut up. All right, we're not even going to talk about that. This is like, it's really functional. It feels like you find it on something like an old, lovely, well-made English old shotgun or something. It's beautiful wood.
It is. I love the fact that everything in here is soft leather. It's real wood. The metal's real metal. Any sort of nasty plastics, I've been looking for a while. I can't really find any shiny, hard plastics.
I don't think you will. It all looks real. If it looks like metal, it probably is, and the same goes for the wood. But let's move on to the thing immediately in front of me. What do you think of this steering wheel? Hopefully I'm not giving you a leading question here, Alex.
I hate it.
Don't beat around the bush.
No, I hate it. I think it looks like Predator. What's that thing that sort of looks like it's coming at you to get you? That's what I think it looks like.
It's like fangy jowls hanging down here. Yeah, totally. It does look a bit like that, actually.
Genesis is obviously trying to make a statement with its steering wheels. They're kind of almost a 2-spoke design, but I much prefer the 2-spoke steering wheel in the GV80
Well, that one is actually a true 2-spoke. This is kind of, it looks a bit like a 2, but it's more like 4.
Yeah.
I'm going to disagree with you. I don't like any of them. I think it's just, I know, so Genesis says it's more ergonomic and a bit more functional because you can get your hand more places around the wheel. But I frankly am prepared to sacrifice a little in the way of functionality to have a steering wheel which looks a bit better than this.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that's probably going to be a bit of a polarizing design element, but I do like 2-spoke in the GV80.
While we're talking about the look of things, let's move to the exterior, because on the outside there is a set of 19-inch wheels that you and I have been discussing quite a lot.
We have. When they first rolled up, I was like, ooh, that's a brave choice, isn't it? It kind of looks like a BMW from the 90s. Kind of.
It is a bit, actually, yeah.
Or does it look like a Lazy Susan from an Asian restaurant, perhaps?
Neither of those particularly kind descriptions. So we've been living with them for about a day now. Have they grown on you? Have they grown off you?
The opposite. I gave them the benefit of the doubt to begin with because I like that they're different. I like that they exist, absolutely, but I would not option those on my car.
I am still undecided. I quite like them. I'm erring on the side of favourable. The thing I don't like about them is they would be a massive pain in the ass to clean.
You need a toothbrush,
Totally.
I think, to clean those
Sticking
properly.
with styling then, overall on the outside, how do we feel? Have they done a good job of making this car look decent, handsome and premium?
Yeah, I think they have. I think, the biggest compliment you can pay is that it looks different. So people that are in this market, for an E-Class or a 5 Series or an Audi A6 or A7, the people that buy this car might be the type of people that used to buy a Saab, They're looking for something a little bit alternative, something a bit different, and I think the exterior design ticks that box.
Good observation. The styling for me is a bit of a miss. It has grown on me the more I look at it. I always struggle with that kind of, you already mentioned the Audi A7 kind of, doesn't know whether it's a hatchback or a sportback or a coupe. Or it works even less well in this application, unfortunately.
There are some things that I like. I like the side repeaters for the indicators on the side of the car. I think that's really cool. I also like how the tailpipes kind of look like the shape of the Genesis emblem, which I think is a pretty cool little touch.
They've done really well creating a lot of design calling cards and trademarks for themselves. The tailpipes, for one, they've got that symbol in as wherever they can. There's a crisscross pattern you see reoccurring about the place as well. So they're really trying to forge a look for themselves. So there's absolutely no doubting what you're looking at, no mistaking that it's a Genesis.
Absolutely, but I think overall, you and I would probably agree that from a design, aesthetic and execution point of view, the GV80 is a more convincing machine to look at.
Definitely, and one of the things they got really absolutely spot on with that car is the quality and the build quality, design also, all a good package. Driving along this, we've already started to notice a couple of little
We heard
things.
one just there.
Yes.
So there's this awful creak when the body flexes when we go over a bump that kind of erodes that general sense of quality that you do get in here, because it does feel like a really well-made, high-quality, luxury product, but then you get creaks when you go over bumps and...
It's not a good look. If you are coming to the market as a challenger brand, you cannot afford to put a single foot wrong, because the Australian consumer will absolutely slaughter you.
Absolutely. So let's hope that that's just a one-off occurrence for this particular car. But okay, let's quickly talk about the equipment. There's that noise again, Mike.
Yeah, I know. It's not great,
It's
is
really
it?
pronounced. Anyway,
I
equipment.
thought it was your bones. You know what I mean? Like, just...
Hey, you're the old one in this
All right,
relationship.
all right.
Okay, let's talk about the equipment inside the car, because you are getting a lot for your money. Starting with this big central touchscreen, which I think is about 14.5 inches.
Massive.
It's massive, and the way that you interact with the infotainment system, it's really quite logical, and all the buttons, the way it's laid out, I think they've done a really good job with the ergonomics of the interior.
Yeah, beautiful resolution, nice features. It feels very Genesis owned. It doesn't feel like it's been borrowed by someone.
Correct, which it did in old Genesis models. The central screen and all of the infotainment system felt like it was lifted straight from a Hyundai.
Totally. And there's also a really nice touch of technology down here with the dials. You've got a like 1 foot in the past with a lovely traditional analog dial, but then also digital side as well. You quite like that.
I do, and when you use the indicators, the thing that I love the most is that a little camera pops up there for your blind spot where the dial was.
It's really, really clever. It's a nice touch carried over from a similar rendition in the GV80, but slightly different interpretation.
I use it all the time. It's actually really, really helpful. The 3D camera and the parking cameras on this car are superb, not only for their resolution, but for all the different angles that you get. And it also has this really cool, like, Grand Theft Auto scene, which you can actually look at the car
and
twist it around and go up and down. And
that is such a wicked feature. You know what I love about that is they've got the paint color on the outside correct as well.
But I actually like the wheels on this model more than I do on this actual car.
Yeah, that's the one thing they haven't got right. They did get it right in the G80, didn't they? It matches, but on here it seems to have another wheel design, and I prefer the one that's in the one, our little digital virtual one. How good is this climate panel? This is one of my other favourite things in here. Like, it's really well integrated. As you were mentioning earlier, that I think they've pinched a bit of a design touch from Audi with that lovely flowing line between the door trims through to the dash. It's well laid out. You've got everything that you need up here and nothing what you don't.
You do get lots of useful storage. There's a big cubby at the front here for your phone with 2 USB storage ports, a couple of nice cup holders, which look suspiciously narrow.
Yeah, what are you going to fit in there? You're never going to
small coffee, maybe not a large. No. But in here, another big, central cubby, and you can put some valuables and stuff in here to stop them rolling around. Plus, sound system, standard 21 speaker Lexicon sound system. That is a boon. The semi-autonomous system is also one of the better ones out there, so it'll keep you in your lane. And I like the fact that when you're at a set of lights, a little chime comes up when the car moves in front of you.
I love that. They're not the first to do that, but it's a great little feature.
It's a good function, yeah.
Up here, you get double glazing for the front.
It is very quiet in here. I should mention that.
It is.
NVH
when I'm driving like a maniac.
Oh, that was a rough corner, mid-corner bumps. We'll get to how this thing drives soon. Definitely. But it is nice and quiet in here. It does have active noise cancelling, like your Bose headset. So this car does have that, and I think it is nice and quiet in here. It does feel refined and premium.
But this car, you can pretty much tell it's been designed for not just the front row occupants, it's all about the second row as well.
Absolutely. It's really comfortable back there. I like the 2 outboard seats. They're quite bucket-like. They've got a lot of lateral support and a lot of room as well. Lots of headroom, lots of knee room. I could happily spend 8 or 9 hours back there, tapping away on the laptop.
I just sit there. I probably just listen to podcasts or some movies. You work a lot harder than I do. It is lacking of a few bits and pieces back there. There's not a huge amount of technology. There's no climate panel for the people in the second row.
Limited. And only 1 USB port, which is odd.
Just lacking a little bit of technology. You've got the privacy blinds. This lovely panoramic sunroof extends to the second row, so you
That's an improvement over the GV80. So in the GV80, you actually get 2 individual sunroofs, which I don't like. I'd much prefer.
No, it looks a bit epoxy. It looks like an afterthought, doesn't it? Like it's been retrofitted. That's good. Although that might be the root of that annoying noise. So
it could be.
I'll probably do without it.
As a whole, though, I think they've done a really good job in terms of value, undercutting the established players in the market, which, as a new player, you need to do. And the general sense of quality and luxury you get in here is very impressive. What we haven't really spoken about is what's it like to drive. Okay, what do you reckon?
I'm so conflicted by this engine because it feels to me like it's been tuned entirely for torque and comfort and lowdown and everything, because 2.5 litres could rev out and produce all these glorious high power figures, but it doesn't. It focuses way more on the lowdown. So acceleration off the mark was initially really encouraging, and then it kind of flattens off. There's no point revving this engine so much. Its power delivery is very diesely in nature, isn't it?
Absolutely it is, which, to be fair, this isn't a sports car. It is a luxury sedan. So perhaps that is the correct calibration for the engine. Look, 100 extra kilowatts compared to what you get for same money in the Mercedes and BMW model ranges, that's a significant performance advantage.
Yeah, but there's far more to this car than just its engine. That 8-speed homemade automatic gearbox, one of Hyundai Genesis' own designs there. How does that translate into actually driving in the real world?
I think it's good. It's smooth, it's smartly calibrated for around town driving, and I think when you start to press on with some windy roads, which we're about to do in a second, I think it's fast and quick-witted enough. It's not going to win any performance awards, but again, this isn't a performance car.
It's not, and that ZF gearbox that you'll find in a BMW is a hard act to follow. So they're a bit brave move, bold move, going in-house and trying to develop their own competitor.
The most interesting thing about this car is how it sounds.
Yeah, except it doesn't sound like that, does it? Because what's it called? The Symposer.
Sound Symposer, yes. So it has this system which pipes fake exhaust noise into the cabin. We have it on strong at the moment. You can get rid of it altogether, and thank goodness for that, because it is dreadful.
Yeah, it's not great. But it's for me, the biggest problem, it doesn't even sound like a 4-cylinder. They've tried to fake it into sounding a bit more V80 or something, and it just hasn't worked. Yeah. It's not a bad sounding engine in its own right. I would just think leave it as it is.
That's right. The entry-level 4-cylinder G80 gets passive dampers, whereas the all-wheel drive V6 gets a much more advanced suspension system. It gets adaptive dampers, and also Genesis's version of Mercedes-Benz Magic Ride Control, basically, which uses cameras in the front of the car to read the road ahead and prime the suspension for impact.
That system is super clever, and if it works well, it has a dramatic effect on the ride comfort and quality of any car. So I'd be really interested to do a side-by-side comparison, see how this fares alongside that adaptive damper one. That ride quality is also impacted when it comes to pushing this car a little bit harder. Now, you might argue that this kind of vehicle is not intended to be driven particularly enthusiastically or with gusto, but I would argue that point because if you're going up against BMW 5 Series, Mercedes E-Class, Jaguar, you absolutely have to be able to create a car that drives in a rewarding fashion.
Absolutely. This is not going to better any of those cars for on-limit handling, I don't think, because when you start to press on, like we're about to now, unfortunately you start to get some ragged edges to this car's behaviour.
Yeah, it becomes very choppy very quickly over mid-corner imperfections and lumps and bumps. The body control isn't great. It seems to bound and lollop through lumps.
Like that.
Yeah, that was a great example. Perfectly timed.
Yeah, it's quite soft, but then surprisingly sharp over big bumps like that one. So unfortunately, the body control doesn't inspire a lot of confidence when you start to push on, and sort of this uncouth behaviour does start to erode the sense of luxury and refinement that this car is all about.
Yeah, exactly. Pushing it through some of those corners, it really starts to feel heavier than it actually is. It's about 1.8 tons, but for me, I have a real problem positioning it with confidence in the road, and it just feels a little bit unwieldy.
The good news is that while the steering is dreadful in sport, it does have a custom mode where you can switch the steering to normal and keep the engine in angry mode, so it is avoidable, the steering, which is good. Lots of grip though.
Yeah, well, you're doing your best to find the limits, but it has tons of grip, perhaps down to a very, very good quality Michelin Pilot Sport tyre in each corner.
And the V6 model gets a higher spec tyre again, Michelin Pilot Sport 4S. So kudos to Hyundai for fitting some proper boots to this thing.
Yeah, but is that trying to mask a problem that they're well aware of? You know, that chassis, we know it perhaps flounders a little bit. Maybe this is Band-Aid on a broken leg.
Big bump. Oh. Mate, the damping across there isn't actually that bad, is it? It takes it in its stride. It doesn't take a big second bite at recovering.
We've been through that bump in worse, for sure. I just would be so keen to see how much better the adaptive damper with the predictive system does through that. That's exactly where that kind of thing, it has a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Brakes are also a bit of a concern. If you're looking to push on and carry a bit of speed and then lose it, we actually had some interesting moments driving this car hard earlier today. It doesn't have ventilated discs on the back, and we actually had a pretty good smoke screen.
They are smoky.
Yes. So again, it hasn't been approached with a complete focus on the sports and dynamic elements, and I feel if you're competing against the Germans and some other competitors, you have to.
Look, I think the performance is adequate. I think it's a 6-second car. It'll take about 6 seconds to hit 100 k's an hour. We're in a big bus. I think that's pretty brisk.
Adequate is exactly the right word to describe it. It's enough for a car like this. If we've already identified that it's not particularly rewarding to chuck through corners, then why do you need it to accelerate like a drag car? I think the balance there is perfect.
Not the most engaging car to drive quickly, but there are a lot of positives to the G80. I think it looks kind of interesting, which is important. Value equation is brilliant. I think the build quality and sense of luxury and equipment, again, big ticks. Question is though, Dan, is it enough to convince you to buy one over the established players?
The established players being the Germans, if that's your question, no. Much as I would like to say, yes, of course, it's a perfectly good car, it's very well rounded as it is, The passionate side of me would have to be going for something German. But I'll ask you the same question, and I will extend you another caveat on that question. Would you have this car over a Lexus? Now, this, of course, Genesis is a challenger brand, as was Lexus back 25 years ago. So that's really the main question we're asking here. Would you have this over a Lexus?
That's a tough one, I think, because both cars major on, beautiful build quality, lots of equipment, really getting extra bang for your buck in the value equation. Yes, I think I would. What about
I would
you?
too.
Yeah?
I absolutely would too. Yeah, I thought you were going to say no, you'd stick with a Lexus because dynamically the Lexus, we're probably talking GS and that kind of realm. It probably is a little bit more
cohesive, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, a bit more responsive and enjoyable. But I just don't think that's something you really ever are going to be too concerned about in a car like this. I think we just let it do what it does so well, and that is luxuriously cosseting two fabulous gentlemen around the countryside.
The reason that I hesitated when I said, would I have this over a Lexus or not, is because what I really wanted to say was the car that I really want is the GV80, which is the SUV version of this car. And that's like, that's a little internal dilemma for me because I should prefer the sedan over the SUV.
Credit to Genesis and its G80 for the purpose of driving people around in comfort and luxury and relaxation. It aces it, really.
Yeah, kudos to Genesis. Excellent car with a few flaws, but we have reached a conclusion where we'd actually recommend an SUV over a sedan.
Right, that's it, I'm getting it. I feel like we're not quite done with this review though, Alex, because we've talked a little bit about the V6 version of the G80, and I feel like that's the car we really need to explore before we make up our mind completely.
I do feel like we've probably driven the weaker variant in the G80 model range, and the V6 version is 15 grand more. That's a chunk of change, but in the grand scheme of this car, it's not, a huge step, and you are getting a lot more for your money. All-wheel drive, big step up in engine performance. So yeah, I think we do need to drive that one.
This story is to be continued.
Yes.